Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we will be reading from Surah 21, verse 93. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. However, they disputed among themselves. However, they divided themselves into disputing religions. All of them will come back to us for judgment. As for those who work righteousness while believing, their work will not go to waste. We are recording it. It is forbidden for any community we had annihilated to return. So God is telling us about the divisions among the people that have happened. You know, all these people have divided themselves into disputing religions. But of course, in the eyes of God, there's only one religion that is acceptable to God, right? So people who have decided to choose that religion and decided to not quote-unquote unite with like all these other religions, they're not included in that category because they're on the side of God, and everybody was supposed to be on the same side, but these people divided themselves into disputing factions. But among them, there are people out of those people. There's the religion of God, the religion of monotheism, the religion of submission, which is the religion of those who work righteousness. God says their work will not go to waste. We are recording it. And then verse 95 is a very important statement, which God says, it is forbidden for any community we had annihilated to return. And it's very important to understand that, because there's also some people that have taken this to a different level, and God will come back to that later. But the idea is that God has a very strict rule for this planet, which He does not change, and that is that once someone leaves this planet, their soul, once they die permanently, they're never returned back, right? Like, we've never seen a dead person come back and start living, that they died and then somehow they were sent back. I mean, of course, we have examples of people saying they had near-death experiences, but even those, one can argue, are near-death experiences are not actually death, like someone died and came back like 20 years later or something like that, right? I mean, we have the example of the people of the cave, but they weren't actually dead, they were just sleeping. So God willing, I'll continue reading the end of the world. It says, not until Gog and Magog reappear will they then return. They will come back from every direction. That is when the inevitable prophecy will come to pass, and the disbelievers will stare in horror. Woe to us, we have been oblivious. Indeed, we have been wicked. And the footnote here says, by the year 2270 AD, thanks to God's mathematical miracle in the Quran, Appendix 1, America will be the heart of Islam, and billions around the globe will have believed in the Quran. 933, 41, 53, 48, 28, 61, 9. Gog and Magog, allegorical names of villainous communities, will be the only bastions of heathenism, and they will attack the submitters. That is when the world will end. 1587, 1894, Appendix 25. Gog and Magog are mentioned in 1894 and 2196, 17 verses before the end of each surah. This may indicate the time of their appearance. So when it says not until Gog and Magog reappear, we know that, as the footnote says here, and you can read more about it in the appendix that is referenced here, which is Appendix 25, for more details. Um, God is talking about 10 years before the end of the world. Excuse me. In 2270 AD, Gog and Magog will reappear, right? And after that, the end of the world happens 10 years after that, and that's when the souls will be restored, right? It does not mean that the Gog and Magog, the ones who were killed, they will be resurrected and come back, right? It says, not until Gog and Magog reappear will they then return. So it's not talking about Gog and Magog returning. It's talking about the people returning after Gog and Magog has appeared in 2270, which fulfills the final prophecy, right? And the 10-year thing erupts. Then all the souls will be coming back. So God says no souls are going to come back until 2280, which is when the world comes to an end. So pretty simple. So if someone, says to you that we will have a second life in this world, or 9 lives or anything like that, that's not true. And I'm mentioning that because there was a group of people, eccentric individuals who came up with this idea that we will all come back to live for the last 10 years on planet Earth. Like all the people in the world that ever died, they'll all be resurrected for 10 years just before the end of the world. And they thought this is what's going on. So anyways, just wanted to clarify that. And God says in verse 98, the hereafter, you and the idols you worship beside God will be fuel for hell. This is your inevitable destiny. If those were gods, they would not have ended up in hell. All its inhabitants abide in it forever. They will sigh and groan therein, and they will have no access to any news. As for those who deserved our magnificent rewards, they will be protected from it. So, God says that when the inevitable prophecy will come to pass, the disbelievers will stare in horror. And then they'll realize, all their works, like the veil, will be taken off from their eyes, right? And they will see, okay, all this was the truth, and I didn't prepare for it. It becomes evident, and what all they were doing was just temporary. So they will realize, and then they will know what they were up against and how they spent this life. All will come back to them, and God, like God says, everything they ridicule will come back to haunt them, and so they will realize that they have been wicked. They'll confess, actually, in this way, that they have been wicked. And then God says that these idols and these people will be the fuel for hell, right? Which is something to think about. And God says that if those people were actually gods, obviously, then these people would not have ended up in hell. But this is a fact. God has seen them. God knows they are in hell, right? We're only experiencing it right now. And God says they will sigh and groan therein, and they'll have no access to any news, right? They will not even hear something as good as, like, as small as, like, an exciting news of something, Their lives will just be so miserable that they will be just completely isolated, complete isolation, and just unfathomable, like, misery that one can imagine that these people will be in, like the worst kind of torture, depression, you can think of. Their state will be worse than anything you could even experience here in this world, because there's absolutely no hope at the end of this tunnel. Absolutely no light at the end of this tunnel, And God says, as for those who deserved our magnificent rewards, which will be the believers, they will be completely protected from it, as a blessing from God, as His promise. God always keeps His promise, and we have to, just trust in God and continue to do righteous works, God willing. given that if we are doing them now, if we are not doing righteous works, then we need to change our course and start doing righteous works. The righteous, verse 102. They will not hear its hissing. They will enjoy an abode where they can get everything they desire forever. The great horror will not worry them, and the angels will receive them joyfully. This is your day that has been promised to you. So, I mean, this is really amazing, and I think we should reflect on it, because it really shows to us, like, like how gracious God is. These are the people that fail to side with God's absolute authority. And if it was up to God, like, they, if it was up to anybody else, like, they wouldn't have any of these things. Like, God could just say, okay, I forgive you, let's say, and at least you can come back, and things probably won't be the same, and you can come back, right? I mean, this is what a typical response should be from any human being who's probably very kind at the most. But we see God as so kind and so merciful. He values all our efforts and all our struggles that we go through in trying to make it, and He rewards us, God willing, for these things, because He is appreciative, and He is the most gracious, and He's the most merciful, right? And so there is a lot of wisdom behind all of this. Imagine the state of the human beings right now, where God has promised all of these amazing things, and we know God's promise is the truth, and He has promised all these amazing things, and we can still see the level of motivation that people have to make it to paradise at this point, right? And imagine if none of this was there. If any of the people would even try. A lot of the people would even try. Obviously people who are devoted to God alone, by heart, would still choose the right thing, because they know that God is the Lord of the universe, and that's the choice they must make because they love God. But for everyone else, that bit of motivation will also be gone, right? But obviously that motivation itself is misleading. We're not doing it to attain those benefits. We're not worshiping God just so we can have those benefits. We're worshiping God because God is God, and He's the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and He's the one who created us, and He's the one who gave us everything we have. And so we are appreciating Him and thanking Him and loving Him back, which is totally natural, right? But one has to understand that, people have to understand the objective, right? The objective is not to chase happiness. I mean, that's what the disbelievers are doing. They're chasing happiness. They don't know where it is, but that's what they're chasing, and they're not getting it. But for the believers, they're not chasing happiness and peace. Of course, they get it as a result, but that's not who they're after. They're after worshiping God, and they're growing their souls because their souls are a part of God, and they know that's the right thing to do. And God says the great horror will not worry them on the day of judgment. The angels will receive them joyfully. I mean, how amazing would that be if you can imagine? The angels, God's angels, would be there to greet the people who are believers in paradise, to receive them, to welcome them. Imagine you going to a fancy hotel, and the workers there, and the people there, like, dressed in amazing uniforms, all neat and tidy, greeting you. Like, you'd probably feel like $1 million, right? But imagine in paradise, you go there and you have angels, beautiful, spectacular, powerful creatures of God. They're kindly, greeting you from God. I mean, this is beautiful, and this is all, part of God's mercy and grace. Verse 104, the day of resurrection. On that day, we will fold the heaven like the folding of a book. Just as we initiated the first creation, we will repeat it. This is our promise. We will certainly carry it out. We have decreed in the Psalms, as well as in the other scriptures, that the earth shall be inherited by my righteous worshippers. This is a proclamation for people who are worshippers. We have sent you out of mercy from us towards the whole world. Proclaim, I have been given divine inspiration that your Lord is one God. Will you then submit? If they turn away, then say, I have warned you sufficiently, and I have no idea how soon or late the retribution will come to you. He's fully aware of your public utterances, and he's fully aware of everything you conceal. For all that I know, this world is a test for you and a temporary enjoyment. Say, my Lord, your judgment is the absolute justice. Our Lord is the most gracious. Only his help is sought in the face of your claims. So God says on the day of judgment, the heaven will be folded like the folding of a book, Imagine. So this kind of tells us, we already know that scientifically speaking, the Big Bang theory has been confirmed, right? But the mathematical miracle on top of it has confirmed the Big Bang theory, and it's not a theory any longer, right? It's a scientific fact. And then also when it talks about folding as a book, like it's talking about the implosion of the heavens and the earth, right? So this universe, this universe and the other universes, they will implode, and scientifically also, I think there is evidence out there that after the expansion, there will eventually be a point where it will no longer expand and it will just implode, right? It's the expansion will not, mathematically or scientifically proven, I guess, that it won't continue forever. And with the Quran, it's proven for sure, right? That eventually it will implode. And so that's what it means, that we will fold it like the folding of a book, right? So you can imagine it just snapping back, right? And God says, the earth shall be inherited by my righteous worshippers. So obviously it's not us coming back to this earth, it's the abode of peace, the abode of eternal happiness that God promises for the believers, where we will see things and recognize things because they're allegorically described for us, but they will not be anything close to this earth. And then God says about the messengers here that God said this is a proclamation for people who are worshipers, right? So the people who are disbelievers, it doesn't matter all the blessings that are around them, it doesn't benefit them in any way. But for the worshipers of God who are devoted to God alone, having sent a messenger is a blessing out of mercy from this mercy of God to the whole world. Now, here it's not specifically talking about Muhammad or any particular messenger, right? And so obviously, the so-called Mohammedans use this to praise and worship Muhammad, to say, and they don't know about the rest of the verses of the Quran, but all of them, they know the Arabic verse behind this, and they'll paste it on the walls everywhere, and they'll blast it on the televisions, and in the mosques, overemphasis on selective overemphasis and concealment, right? And so they'll do that to idolize Muhammad, but this could also apply to any messenger, and this could also specifically in this case could apply to the Quran as well. The Quran is also sent out of mercy from God towards the whole world, and they would be synonymous to God sending Muhammad too, because obviously it's not about Muhammad himself. He's dead now as far as this world is concerned, but the message is here, right? So you have to cherish and uphold the truth, the message, the Quran itself. That's appreciating the blessing. Obviously, because Muhammad was just a man like us, that God chose to use as a messenger, but the message is the one that we need to cherish and uphold, right? If someone sends you, a loved one sends you a letter, you take the letter, and if you really love the person, you'd hold the letter close to your heart. You won't hug the mailman. Maybe you would, but uh, that's still stupid, right? Um, uh, you're supposed to cherish the message that God has given us, and that's the whole idea behind it. And God says that the job of the messenger here, right? And it's talking about the messenger because we know it is saying here to proclaim, but again, the Quran can also proclaim, right? It says, I have been given divine inspiration that your God is one God. Will you then submit? So that will specifically narrow it down to the messenger because the messenger is the one who's given inspiration. The Quran cannot be given inspiration. The Quran itself is, a revelation of God. But the proclamation here is clear talking about the messenger. Proclaim, I have been given divine inspiration that your God is one God. And if they turn away, obviously the messenger's job is just to convey the message. The fact that he came and he conveyed the message, his job is complete. Now, after that point, if the messenger dies on its own, or they kill the messenger, or he gets murdered, um, he did his job, right? His job. It's not his job to convince the entire world to submit, but he did his job efficiently enough for this message to continue and carry on, and eventually, um, uh, you know, uh, become the dominating religion in the entire world. And as we read earlier about Gog and Magog, and the footnote here, it says that America will become the heart of Islam by 2270 AD, and then Gog and Magog will be the only bastions of heathenism that will fight the believers, right? So God's victory is going to come as a result of that. Thanks to, it says, as a result of the mathematical miracle that God has given. And we know that it's this generation that is promised this victory because of the 19 based proofs that are found in it, which are indicators that it's referring directly to this generation, right? And so by that note, I mean, we're clearly the generation that is being referred to here, because if it goes beyond that, it's not going to be this generation, it's going to be the next one after. All right, but it's talking about this generation. So God willing, for those of us who will live long enough, will see God's promised victory and see submission prevail, and we'll see the United States of America become the heart of submission. So God willing, I'll continue reading verse 22. The pilgrimage, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. O people, you shall reverence your Lord, for the quaking of the hour is something horrendous. The day you witness it, even a nursing mother will discard her infant, and a pregnant woman will abort her fetus. You will see the people staggering as if they're intoxicated, even though they're not intoxicated. This is because God's retribution is so awesome. Among the people, there are those who argue about God without knowledge and follow every rebellious devil. It is decreed that anyone who allies himself with him, he will mislead him and guide him to the agony of hell. Okay, so the title of this chapter is Pilgrimage, or Al-Hajj, which is, and so later on we will see some details about Hajj, or at least the mentioning of Hajj in it, right? But still, interestingly, this chapter's title, Pilgrimage. Yeah, it does mention Abraham in this chapter. So, yeah, so it does mention also pilgrimage too in verse 26 onwards. And so that makes sense that the title of this chapter is pilgrimage. And in these verses, God is talking about the sheer um, magnitude of this day, the weight of this day, and how awesome it's going to be, and how difficult it's going to be on people, specifically people who are disbelievers. Because it says you will see the people, when 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 the people are like drugged, like it talks about intoxication. I mean, you could think about someone being drunk too, right? But it's not like the people are going to be like drunk, right? They could be, God knows. But the way I imagine it, imagine people on drugs, like they're full of like paranoia and shock, and completely zoned out, you know. Um, I mean, that's what's going to happen, you know. And it's really hard to put yourself in the mindset, all right, to think that you would be so shocked, but totally believable, of course, right? You'd be so shocked that you would think that if you look at these people, you would think that they're intoxicated, but it's just they know they're what they're up against, and this is the shocker, and then the title of one of the names of the Day of Judgment is the shocker, right? And so, you know, imagine just someone getting electrocuted, right? And they're just completely zoned out. But in this case, you know, someone finding out for the first time, that they are being sentenced to be doomed in the worst kind of torture and imprisonment that they can imagine for the rest of their lives. Of course, the sky is falling apart, literally speaking. The universes, everything is imploding. So naturally, knowing that these people are not heaven bound, right? Um, I mean, you can imagine how the state would be. May God save us from that. It says, the day you witness it, even a nursing mother will abort her fetus. A pregnant woman, um even a nursing mother will discard her infant. A pregnant woman will abort her fetus, right? Out of shock and out of no care for the baby. Of course, at that point, she doesn't even have to care about the fetus or the nursing child, because that is it. That is the end. But you will see the people staggering. That part is still um, is quite significant indicator of their mental state at that time, because of course they never thought that this would happen, and now that they're seeing it unfold before their eyes, God has already witnessed all of this. So it's not like imagination. This is actually describing something that has already happened, and the one who has seen it is describing us here, and we can see how terrible it is, so that we know that we can't say on the day of judgment that, well, we didn't know the hell is going to be so terrible, or we didn't know that this is going to happen and that is going to happen. God is telling us everything. Look, this is going to happen, that is going to happen, this is what you'll see, you'll never get out of it, it'll be eternal misery, etc. And people are still going about their ways, interestingly, as if there's no accountability at the end. So God willing, I'll continue reading. Well, one other thing I want to mention before that here is that God says it is decreed that anyone who allies himself with him, he will mislead him and guide him to the agony of hell. And it's talking about those people who argue about God without knowledge and without the enlightening scripture, and follow every rebellious devil, right? And so, of course, these people have devils that make them believe that they're on the right path. I mean, when it comes to people arguing, right? You see people arguing all the time about the truth. Try this. Try posting something online about God, and see how people respond to it. See how the disbelievers will argue with you, and you can see like they're not even educated enough or qualified enough to to even respond because they haven't even read the Quran, right? And they're attacking it. They don't know, like today, I was looking at a video, and it was about God's creation. It was about one of the ants, okay? And this ant has skeleton that is made out of mercury. God has made it out of mercury, right? So it's an ant that is totally silver, and then it has a skin that is like wedged like this. So the light comes and reflects, comes from all angles and reflect, doesn't get absorbed, right? And then this ant is able to go in the sun in extreme heat and is able to survive while no light comes inside, hits the body of the ant, and the ant stays very cool, the temperature, and the ant is able to function and do everything, right? And the narrator who was describing this ant was like, this proves that evolution perfected the creation of this. And I'm like, and I look in the comments, like, how would evolution know? Like, does evolution have a brain? Like, it's amazing. People would even describe it, and then in this way, and then you have all kinds of people saying all sorts of things. Like, obviously there are people talking about God, and so you see people arguing with them. It's like, no, it's not creation, it's evolution, and evolution has so many proofs, and creation has, and it's like creation has no proofs, right? They're saying that, but it just, and this was, I think, right before I read those comments, and then when I looked at it, I was like, that's true, yeah. You see people doing that, and these people have devils, that are in their heads whispering to them, that make them think that they're right? I was also, reminds me, also watching this other comedian too, and he was saying he was like blaspheming about God on stage, and he was telling people he doesn't believe in God, and he was saying like God is their imagination and all this stuff, and obviously, so they have devil, and you could tell from the way he was talking that he thought that he was very enlightened, right? And this is a signal that the devil is playing with these people's minds, and that's why it says it is decreed that anyone who allies himself with the devil, he will mislead him to the agony of hell. Like, the person would not even know that they're being dragged into hell at that point. Those devils are so evil and so manipulative that God partners with such souls who actually deserve it. Verse 5, where did we come from? O people, if you have any doubt about resurrection, remember that we created you from dust, and subsequently from a tiny drop, which turns into a hanging embryo. Then it becomes fetus that is given life or deemed lifeless. We thus clarify things for you. We settle in the wombs whatever we will for a predetermined period. We then bring you out as infants. Then you reach maturity. While some of you die young, others live to the worst age, only to find out that no more knowledge can be attained beyond a certain limit. Also, you see a land that is dead, then as soon as we shower it with water, it vibrates with life and grows all kinds of beautiful plants. This proves that God is the truth, and that He revives the dead, and that He is omnipotent, and that the hour is coming, no doubt about it, and that God resurrects those who are in the graves. MashaAllah. So really amazing verse, MashaAllah. So these verses, in this verse, it is talking about reflecting on our origin, right? And the footnote here says, the Quran's mathematical miracle is based on number 19. As it turns out, this number represents the Creator's signature on His creations. Thus, you and I have 209 bones in our bodies, or 19 times 11. The length of pregnancy for a full-term fetus is 266 days, or 19 times 14. And then there's reference to Langman's Medical Embryology by T.W. Sadler, page 88, 1985. So while people haven't disputed the days of pregnancy, people have since then, scientists have disputed the number of bones. And I wonder if it has to do anything with the miracle that they all of a sudden decided that they were going to count more bones than there actually are. And so they changed the number of bones. But the reason why the number of bones has changed is because they looked at it actually increased, right? And they looked at a bone and they said, no, this is not one bone, this is multiple bones because they're fused together. But then there are other bones that are also fused together, but they count them as one, right? So that is not a consistent idea that they came up with. And this shows to us that they should have accepted the 209, that it represents God's signature. So don't let anybody tell you that we have more than 209 bones, right? Because we do have 209 bones in our body, and it is mathematically proven also based on the number 19 and the messenger of God, showing that proof to us. But also if you look at the bones and how they're divided, that is inconsistent, right? If they have to split those bones into three, then they should also be splitting other bones, but they didn't do that, right? So that is another thing that people should not put their another reason why people should not put their blind trust in scientists. If you're going to look for scientists and you're going to believe scientists over God and his messenger, then you shouldn't accept that there are 209 bones, right? And then you can say all sorts of things about the messenger and go against God. So we have to remember that these so-called or these scientists also, I don't want to say so-called, but all these scientists, are not gods. They're also human beings, just like us, right? All these scientific institutions like CDC in the United States, which is the Center for Disease Control, is not God. NASA, which is the United States Space Agency, is not God, right? So if God is telling you something or indicating something based on the mathematical proof, and the scientists are saying something else, then your job, being a worshiper of God, is to give more weight, to what you're seeing based on the mathematical proofs that are, God's signature, right? So this is what we learn here. The other thing is, so this very accurately describes, this is one of the things about the Quran, it's like you don't find any nonsense in the Quran. So this book was revealed more than 1400 years ago, but the description of how the child is born, talking about fetus, all these things, it's scientifically accurate. Like if you look at the stages of development of a fetus, it is very accurate. Also in other verses, this is described in even more detail, like the fetus, right? But the part here to pay attention to is it says we will for a predetermined period, right? So that specific period is where the footnote stands. And so God says that if the human being doesn't believe that they'll be resurrected, they should really reflect on this, right? Like first, we were nothing, as human beings. Where did we come from? God created us from dust. And then as the reproduction happened, he created us from a tiny drop. You have the chromosomes that fuse together. You have the sperm and the egg that fuses together to form a zygote. And then it goes through the fusion process, and the chromosomes, go through its, division process. Who's creating that? Who's telling them to divide, right? Could you use something like, purely like, say, evolution? Can evolution describe how these chromosomes work? Can evolution explain how the genetics work? Like, how did the genes program you to grow in the way you grow? Like, if your father has curly hair, you end up having curly hair. Like, how does evolution do that, right? And when you actually dive deeper, you'll understand how complex it is. Like the gene sequence in our bodies or any creature's bodies. I mean, there is a sequence of numbers that has to fall in a particular balance for things to work. For even like one thing to happen, right? And you need like supercomputers to program that. If you were to like solve any mysteries or anything like that, or make any changes, meaningful changes to anything, right? And even then it's like super hard. And so thinking that, yeah, evolution just automatically, just haphazardly happens, right, does not make any sense. And so when people talk about proofs about evolution, they don't talk about proofs of creation. There's more proofs of creation alone than there's proof of evolution, right? And so, yes, evolution does exist, as we learn, but it's a divinely controlled process that is controlled by God, through which He creates these variations in His creation. But people use it to deny God completely, which obviously does not make sense. Like, how would you explain how the brain is developing inside the fetus? Like, how does the fetus know that it has to do that? Imagine like you're building a house, right? I mean, think of this body as a very advanced machine, right? And how does it just starts building on its own, right? And you can say, yeah, evolution is building it. Okay, evolution, you can say, for whatever reason, built one of them, but how does it keep repeating itself? Like, who tells that little blob inside the mother's womb to create a heart, to put all the connections together, to the brain and to the other organs, and starts pumping blood in it, and how does it know it needs to develop even, I mean, there's so many things to consider, right? From every angle you look at it, I mean, there's no way you can answer that, right? I mean, and how the eyes develop, right? I mean, do you think it's so simple, like, to plug in an eye? Like, it's not like a webcam you attach to a computer, even a webcam, you have to build it, right? But you have these amazing organs, each and every one of them, that are so complex. I mean, how would you build that, right? I mean, the vision that God has given us, that baby is given for free at birth, who connects that, that's able to control the visual senses of the child, to the brain, and he can process images, he can process sounds. If you were to build that in a computer, for example, that it takes considerable amount of work and connections put together for something to work, right? Even looking at the brain itself, right? It's so complex. I mean, we're just beginning to not even scratch the surface on how the human brain works, right? We're so far away, and you can see that in how all the treatments that they try to do for people's having all kinds of neurological disorders and stuff, like, completely fails, right, at this point, which shows to us how complex God's creation is, how amazing it is, and how intricate the design is. And He makes it all happen, right? And then we come out, and then we're able to have a sense of self, and we're able to communicate. We have souls. I mean, how does the soul come in? How do they describe that, right? And then God talks about also another example which is, I'm already past my time, so I need to speed up. So God also talks about land that is dead. There are seeds that are eliminated from plants that if you don't water them, you can save them for centuries, right? And then you just put a tiny drop of water on it, and it activates the seed, and the seed grows into a plant. So it's like, imagine the seed is like you being in the grave. Us being in the grave is like a seed that is sitting in a grave under the ground. And then when God wants, He will activate us, and we will come out of our graves, right? And God says it's easy for God to do. Verse 8, a common occurrence. Among the people there is one who argues about God without knowledge and without guidance and without enlightening scripture. Arrogantly he strives to divert the people from the path of God. He thus incurs humiliation in this life, and we will commit him on the day of resurrection to the agony of burning. This is what your hands have sent ahead for you. God is never unjust towards the people. And then God talks about the fair weather friends. verse 11 says, "Among the people there is one who worships God conditionally. If things go his way, he is content. But if some adversity befalls him, he makes an about face. Thus he loses both this life and the hereafter. Such is the real loss. He idolizes beside God what possesses no power to harm him or benefit him. Such is the real strain." And so this is referring to people, being fair weather friends when they are only on the side of God when things are going good for them. Like they're submitting to God, they're worshiping God, they're happy, with everything God is doing because yes, they're getting money, they're getting children, they're getting all kinds of things that they want. They're happy and content, right? In some ways. But then when things are not going their way, then they're not content. Then they're objecting, right? And so you understanding that God is running everything is a crucial step in you being an unconditional submitter, which is what we are all striving for, to submit to God under all circumstances. When we should not get angry or upset, we should not get sad and worried because we know that God is running everything and we submit to Him cheerfully under all circumstances, right? The key is to cheerfully submit. You submit, not submit unwillingly or grudgingly and think that you have submitted to God. Oh, yeah, I submitted. No, you have to be cheerful about it. You don't let it bother you at all or affect you in any way, right? That's the submission, unconditional submission that we need, and to be with God, under all conditions. So, with this, God willing, I'll end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother. Good study. Yeah, I really like what you said about the bones because I thought the same thing, and I think really Satan inspires these people to you know I think testing 1 2 3. I think I hear it echo. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, Satan like inspires these people, and like what you said, because I've thought the same thing. That they deliberately will change things, to try to oppose, just like the Arabs do, and just out of jealousy that their scientific theories are like evolution are disproven and stuff. Uh, well, I mean, the messenger. To be fair, the messenger talked about it, but he did a good video about this. Mhm. But yeah, I mean, people can make up all kind of stuff. Like they can like when bones fuses together or this or that, or they can count, two things together. Like they tried to count Muhammad. They started misspelling Muhammad's, their idol's name. they were counting invisible letters and stuff. Like even a while back, I had to get ChatGPT lied about. It was either ChatGPT or Gemini. They lied about Halley's Comet, and they were saying it was every 75 years. And I said, no. I said, it's every 76 years. And I said, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's 75 points. And I'm like, no, it's 76, and I showed it some stuff. And he's like, oh, you're right to call that out. And it's like, why are you being so evil? It's maybe, I don't know. Hopefully it's like not my ego or something, but it's upsetting to see, like things argue against the truth just to argue and just to be evil and try to oppose something that's clearly stated and understood, um, that are scientific facts. But I mean, um, yeah, the sun and the moon, line up every 19 years too. Um,
Mhm.
Brothers, I need to wake up very early tomorrow. So I wish you a good day. Thanks a lot for the good study, brother.
And take your mashallah.
MashaAllah, thank you.
Good day. Salam alaikum.
God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless.
All right. So anybody has any comments or questions? Oh, I guess we're the only ones left. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you have any other comments?
um, yeah, I like the verse about the fair weather friends, about
Mm-hmm.
worshiping God conditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I was thinking about like this fair weather friends, they probably weren't ever worshiping God in the first place. They were worshiping the things that were going their way, and that's exactly why when these people lose these things and they don't worship God, that means that they weren't worshiping God to begin with, and they were just worshiping like the condition.
Mm-hmm.
And this get off my phone. This public safety alert.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's messing me up. Yeah,
Uh,
they were just worshiping the condition. Yeah, it was a dust storm or something, tornado
mm-hmm.
out here. But yeah, they were just worshiping the condition to begin with, and that's why like when it leaves them. I mean, I'm even speaking from like past experience, like before submission, when you idolize like another human being. I mean, not to mention like you could be breaking God's law, but when this person leaves, your life, like suddenly, or it doesn't even have to be a person; it could be something else. Then I realize, it's like, become a slave, to these things, and that's why they affect. Essentially, somehow Satan has tricked people, and that's why.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the freedom, mashallah. Like as we come into submission and grow our souls, and it's something we really have to work hard on too, and it's part of the test. But that's why it doesn't matter who leaves or who goes or who comes, and like being an even keel, or like how we could be tested with loss of money and loss of crops. But if God is your God, and that's the only thing you truly care about, then you could lose this person, lose that person, not get something, or get something, and then you're going to be consistent through and throughout. And I mean, not to say that these things don't affect us, because they do affect us. They've like how we're tested with some fear and security, loss of security and stuff. Because I mean, we're humans, and we like these things, and they make things easy. But this is like the detachment and freedom, detachment from these worldly things, and then the freedom that we get by only submitting to God. And I mean, what helps, I think, too, is just realizing. I mean, I know it's. I don't want to say it's not. It's really not cliche, but I mean, just knowing how quickly this life comes and goes, and how limited our time is, and like the good verses you just read. I mean, the day of judgment, um, is the most important day. Like I like how the messenger had put it. He said it's you remember the part where he said it's a universe. It's like a universe. I think he was giving a sermon, but he said it's a universal conference where everybody. There's it's a I forget how he said it, but it was very nice, like the way
Mm-hmm.
he described it, and where everybody, from the past, from the present, and the future are gathered. And so, I mean, this is, when we think about like the year after, like everything else pales, like in comparison, as far as like our mission and our objective and stuff. So, um, but that's all I had for that verse.
Inshallah.
Yeah, and then the verse about verse 5 of Surah 22, about how where did we come from?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a good explanation, about. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, how do you explain just uh, coming into existence? When we,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't create ourselves. We don't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and people, I've thought about this before. It's like, man, the audacity, I guess, of the human being. They came in this world wearing like a diaper, not even able to wipe their own behind, and couldn't even feed themselves at one point. And they grow up and they suddenly start pointing the finger and saying, this is how the world is, this is how creation is. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, who are you, man? You couldn't even wipe your own butt at one point. You needed help from your parents. And
Mm-hmm.
but it just,
Yeah.
I guess it kind of reflects like on the lack of humility and
Yeah.
humbleness of the human being, for them to not think about
Mm-hmm.
like you were just a little infant at one point, and then you've grown
Mm-hmm.
up, and like suddenly you're
Mm-hmm.
commanding. You think you're
Mm-hmm.
the commander of the universe and saying it was created this way, and this is how this is, and it's like, okay, like try to prevent your own death.
Mm-hmm.
See how that works. I mean, like how powerful
Mm-hmm.
really are you? How knowledgeable are you? You know.
Yeah.
But but yeah, it's like these people's devils that I think they trick them, and they
Mm-hmm.
get him to say these things against God.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Brother Jaffer was here earlier, but he's gone.
Yeah, I think it's just me and you at this point. Yeah.
I wonder if he has to wake up early.
Yeah, it gets very late in that time zone, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and yeah, so and like, with Ramadan, also people have to wake up like before dawn to eat, so that just becomes more difficult, I guess. And the last 10 days, is you're at your weakest.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this another thing, another thing we see here in. Oh, I'm hearing feedback.
I can be.
Okay,
Uh,
so yeah, so I think another thing we can see again here is about the common occurrence. Um, as we're saying, there's the one who argues about God without knowledge, without guidance, and without an enlightening scripture. Um, and arrogantly he diverts the people from the just same as what it says among the people there are those who argue about God without knowledge and follow every rebellious devil, right? So this chapter here talks a lot about that, and it's interesting. This chapter is titled Hajj, right? And it reminds me of Adib here because like he is so arrogant and ignorant, and how he knows about the miracle. I mean, think about it. He has physically seen the messenger, and he spent some time with him. Um uh, Even just not too much time, but still, he has seen him and had a few Quran studies with him. Let's say, that we know of, and then he goes on to say that there's no such thing as Hajj. He says just a conference, and so they just have conferences and They say there is no such thing as Hajj. They
I
already.
didn't even know that.
You didn't know that?
I knew it was like with the contact prayers, like he said, nah, you don't even need to do them. But
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
No,
so crazy.
same.
You know, like right
Yeah.
here in the Quran, we have the
Mm-hmm.
pilgrimage. It talks about
Yeah,
the pilgrimage, and
yeah.
like, how can somebody go so far off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Almost like he's being remote controlled into disbelief or something, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's so mind boggling. Like especially too with the contact prayers, but the Hajj thing. I mean, it's you know, I guess they idolize their opinions, and they put like a verse that says they elevate their opinions above God and His messenger.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? It's just a conference. He said that people talk at, or
Yeah, yeah. So they just started having conference. Yeah, I mean, that's how Satan
do they
is.
what about the animal sacrifices, and like what does he say about like the preservation of games then? I mean, does he understand that
I
ties
don't
into the
know. I
conference?
don't know all the details, but this much I know is like that he doesn't. Uh,
Yeah, so he's saying Abraham just I guess at a conference.
yeah, he just needed a venue for conference, and then now we can have our own conference.
Yeah. Yeah, livestock offerings during pilgrimage. Pilgrimage, like all is appointed through Abraham. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think these people want to be messengers themselves, and that's why I think they come up with like absurd, just because they want to have their own interpretation and be
Hmm.
their own messenger. Uh, and of course, like it's really something because I mean these people also were with us at the beginning, and like we all thought the test would be easy, right?
Hmm.
Like we were gonna pass. I mean, because why else? Why else would we come here? But the thing I think I've asked you about it before. I guess we could. This is off topic, but
Hmm.
like I think I've asked this to you before. What your thoughts on it? But you know, like me and you and every other human being that's here. Uh, like when how come we didn't factor in all the other creatures, I guess like the stars and the mountains, like all these other creatures that says, no way, I don't want it. I mean,
Hmm.
how would that not influence? Because, like even if we see something in this world, like a smaller scale, just some like an metaphor, like we would like be like, oh man, there must be some reason that these other creatures in huge numbers are like, no way, they don't want it. I mean, of course, hell was probably explained to us, but how come we didn't look at that and be like, no, 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 yeah, I don't want it. Like, I'm gonna.
Hmm.
I guess it was our. Were we really that bad? Our egos.
Yeah, so it
Do you kind of
was.
know? Do
It
you kind of
was.
know what the
Yeah, yeah.
question? You kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was the ego that said, "No way, I'm not gonna uh, go as a horse and let someone ride me.
right.
I'm not gonna do this." And like we didn't think it was dignified enough, right? Because of our
Oh, I
ego, like
see.
we didn't want to do that. And on top of that, there was also the incentive of going to the high heaven. So we
Right.
were ignorant
But still
Also,
risking hell, like the worst
yeah.
of
So
the
the
worst of the
ignorance
worst of the
that
worst.
yeah. So that's where the ignorance came in, right? Because we said that we thought that, oh yeah, of course I'm going to worship God alone. Like,
Right. So
we
we probably didn't think it
undermined,
was a risk
yeah,
or
we
something.
undermined the difficulty of the
Yeah.
risk that we were taking, right? We
Right.
thought, and this is where ego comes in, right? And arrogance comes in, of course. Like, we think highly of ourselves too, of our intelligence, of our, morality, all these things, So,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. May God protect us, because we already knew, did that the first time, and
yeah,
that's part of like our correcting ourselves here in this world.
hmm
I also thought about like kind of on that note, uh, I wonder like if we witness the decisions, because like when the creatures and the angels that which their number is so enormous, like they don't even know the number, and they have immense, immense, immense powers. Like we know they know all types of maths, like the unexplainable things like black holes, and I mean amazing things that they have power and access to, and they don't even know their numbers, right? So their
hmm
numbers is but just to emphasize the point, but how come we didn't, I mean, you know how there was the peer pressure thing, the social pressure, but why would we get influenced by a small group of people? I guess, like, you know what I mean? And we didn't look at the angels and then, decide like, oh no, they must be right, I guess maybe the decisions too, like, they were, yeah.
Well,
It-
that was a weakness in us, right? God says we were ignorant.
right, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because and we had the free will, to make the decision. So,
Yeah, we were ignorant to the fact that, right, God possesses all.
hmm
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're really in a serious situation.
hmm
All of us, all the human beings. But I mean, now that we're here, we we just have to uh, ask God to help us make it back to
hmm
Him.
hmm
Yeah, I think that's I guess all I have for off topic.
hmm
Maybe.
Okay, so I guess so. If there are no other comments or questions from anyone, God willing, we can conclude our study today. I guess, yeah. So, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum. Someone in the YouTube chat said, "Mashallah, good study."
MashaAllah. Abdul
They
Salam.
said, uh, no, they were. Oh, that's Abdul Salam on YouTube.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Salam alaikum.
Alaikum.